future belongs to service providers who innovate without limits. That's why the fastest growing service providers are choosing the NetSapiens platform. Visit netsapiens.com.
Hey everybody, it's Doug Green and I'm the publisher of Technology Reseller News, and I'm very pleased to have with me today Darrell Butler, Senior Director of Product Management at Avaya. Darrell, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thanks for the invite. It's my pleasure being here.
Well, we're always happy to have Avaya in the house. We're always happy to talk to Avaya. So many of our readers at the enterprise level, channel partner, MSP, MSSP, even our friends in the carrier service provider market have a connection with Avaya. Lots of locations that are branded Avaya, using Avaya product. So getting an update from Avaya, always very welcome. Today, we're going to be talking about the UC space. We're going to be talking about Avaya Nexus. We're also going to be talking about migrations and changes and so on. So Darrell, let's just dive right into it. Can you give me sort of a big view for the Avaya readers and so on, how Avaya is looking at the UC space today?
Yeah, and that was a great introduction, by the way, because even though we're talking about Nexus, if you go back to the last 20 years with Aura, just think of how many customers that are out there, how many use cases, how many phone sets, how many gateways, how many SBCs, and you go on and on and on, right? So,
right.
Definitely. So, and I mean, I just want to state up front is, we're kind of focusing on Nexus, but Aura is not going away. Nexus is actually built on Aura. The key components of Aura is alive and well. And if customers are happy with kind of their on-prem deployment of Aura the way it is today working, they can count on that for years and years to come, right? So we've definitely we've got a new release coming out in October, and we got another one planned for 2027, and another one planned in the 28-29 timeframe as well. But we'll park that because then we'll talk about Nexus, right? Which is the basically a modernization of Aura. We took a look at what was happening in kind of our install base as well as the industry as well. And one thing that we've noticed happening, and you can tell me if you're seeing it as well, is there's been a separation in UC. So we always used to call it UC, and then it became UC and C. With the UC and C being the collaboration piece. What we found with Aura and our install base over the last 5 years for sure is that the collaboration space kind of people were coming in different competitors and doing different things. That really wasn't kind of the true intent of Aura in the past. Aura was a UC machine, quality, reliability. I mean, that's what we're known for. What we decided to do is we're going to focus on our customer base that is using the UC, more of the UC part and more of the mission critical part from a security and reliability and a quality perspective. That is kind of our bread and butter, and that's kind of what we want to focus on. Again, you can keep doing it today with Aura, tomorrow and the next day, and so on and so forth. But if you do want to kind of take advantage of some of the other things that cloud does bring, and we're not making you go to cloud, we'll talk a little bit about it in a little while. But we really took a look at Aura, picked the pieces out that made sense that we could actually build into a hyperscaler and built Nexus out of it, right? So I'll stop there, and we can kind of go on from there. But that's kind of Aura still here. Nexus is modernization of Aura if you wanted it. And your choice of which platform you want to use.
Well, I think that's a good place to begin our conversation because, as we were talking about before we started our podcast today, I've been hearing about cloud first or terms like that forever. If the word cloud first was a person, it'd probably be old enough to vote or join the Navy or do other things, right? So, but you guys seem to be having a different conversation. You guys seem to be looking at this from a different perspective.
Yep. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to modernize kind of our UC solution, which anytime you talk about modernize, you have to include cloud, right? Because
Right.
there are things that you do in cloud from an automation, from an updating, upgrading, security, certs, and things like that that we can do much better in the cloud. But there's things with resiliency and hardware reuse and things like that that it's not a bad thing to be on-prem, right? Because it actually adds that extra layer of resiliency. For example, if you get cut from the cloud and you still need your hospital, you still need your whatever to keep the phone calls up, then we can do that with Nexus. And we do that through the architecture. So we put the core components in the cloud, but we still have, our gateways, which, customers who have Aura today would have their gateways, the G450s. And we have our SIP phones with the J series as well that are obviously on site. They will still remain, right? Even if you get a total separation from the cloud, it can actually still maintain operations and you can still make phone calls until the cloud comes back up. There's also resiliency in the cloud itself in case a certain region comes down. We have different zones, but like we really built this around that it's not cloud only. It's not a UCaaS solution. It's built on, if you're familiar with the Infinity platform, Infinity is kind of more of a CC offer. But what we've taken is the actual platform itself that the CC applications are built on and use that. So we can actually we give customers a dedicated single instance for their actual compute from the UC side, which is separate from the CC side. But it is yours. It is reliable from a cloud perspective. But then we add that on-prem resiliency in there as well with the gateways.
So, Darrell, Avaya is so heavy installed in certain industries, which also happen to be really regulated, such as finance, government, defense, healthcare, and so on.
Yep.
How does this look? How does your vision and what you're rolling out look and integrate with those challenges?
And that's an excellent question because those verticals are a key part of our customer base for sure. Obviously, on the secure side, the Nexus instant, as I said before, is a dedicated single instance, so it's yours. So it's not like a typical UCaaS solution where you actually are sharing or your data could be shared with other customers that are out there. But also just imagine in a scenario with there's a hospital, right? So let's say because of the way that we've architected the resiliency there, not to mention the quality, because you want to be able to kind of make sure you get a quality phone call there. But on the resiliency side, with a dual zone availability in the cloud, the two zones are listening to the phone calls. So if there is actually a break in the zone that you're actually attached to, you would actually get picked up by the secondary zone automatically. There's no drop in the phone call. So it just continues on as normal. Then if you do actually get a complete failure from your cloud provider, the actual gateways then take over. So the gateways will keep things rolling. Now, in the event of a failure from the cloud, the call will need to be rebuilt. But you will actually be able to do phone calls and kind of call back and things like that. So it's not as elegant as the cloud to cloud. But then the other thing as well is that we're introducing something called priority class of service, where you can actually flag up to 40% of your users as a priority user, so that those users are actually given obviously priority in event of a failure, so that they actually will keep up longer. And so just imagine you had like a nursing station where you need to kind of triage things. You want that's more important of a user than a phone that's in maybe the waiting room for people just to phone outside and make phone calls and whatnot. So we want to be able to kind of keep those users up until the last minute, until something is really catastrophic. And then when things are being rebuilt, we have the ability to rebuild those users first and give them priority from getting them back online perspective. So because of the way that we've been able to kind of, we'll call it re-architect Aura, and kind of build on kind of what we've had in the past with the quality, resiliency, and all those things. There's things that modernizing Aura, from a hyperscaler perspective, gives us.
So it sounds to me like what basically you're saying is there's always been certain advantages to prem,
Yep.
certain business continuity, security,
Yep.
and so on. You're retaining those advantages, but then you're sort of adding some of the advantages that occur in cloud.
Yep. Yep. Exactly.
No podcast would be complete without discussing AI. So
Yep.
as we all know, AI is reshaped. We're using AI right now to do this podcast. Explain to me how AI has been factored into what you're doing.
Yep. So when we've already talked about, we share a platform with Infinity. Infinity, obviously, in the contact center, there's much more AI, but we do have AI in certain components, like with phone, speech translation, speech transcription, and things like that. So that's kind of built in with Nexus, and we use AI within your own dedicated instance to make sure that there's nothing outside. However, one of the things that once we get both offers out there from an Infinity as well as a Nexus point of view, there are opportunities, right, if a customer wishes, to be able to take that media stream and actually now take it outside of your own dedicated instance. Again, that will be up to the customer themselves if they feel comfortable in doing that. But because we have basically microservices set up within the Nexus and Infinity focus, or with the Infinity deployments, we can actually leverage AI from the Infinity side, or it could be a third party as well, right? So again, just like Infinity from a platform perspective, we are leveraging MCP, which is basically openness. So anything that is built off an MPC server, an MPC service, then we would be able to leverage that as well. We really want to be good at the resiliency, the quality, the security, and we want to leverage kind of either Infinity from an AI perspective or other third-party suppliers that are out there.
Darrell, and this is so true for the Avaya community, for Avaya using enterprises, for MSPs and channel partners that have Avaya customers and so on. That future-proofing thing is huge. Where am I going? How do I invest my money? We talked a little bit about this before our podcast. Explain to me how future-proofing has been built in.
Modernization, yeah, that is. I don't want to say loaded, but that is a really good question, right? So let me kind of talk from a modernization perspective. The way we see it. What we tried to do was modernize the software stack based on Aura, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a big heavy lift from a customer perspective, right? So we'll do the heavy lift, right? We've actually developed tools that allows customers to be migrated or modernize their systems from the old Aura to Nexus, right? So it happens behind the scenes. Data migration is all done. Data continuity. We already talked about the investment protection on the reuse of the gateways, and the phone sets, analog and digital, are in there as well. But we didn't talk about some of the integrations that customers have done. So AES is coming over as part of Nexus, and that's where all kind of the call flow integrations are done. So that kind of is part of the data migration and things like that. But then, like we already talked about, it allows us, modernizing the stack and kind of, giving the investment protection to the customer. We get to add new things like the priority class of service that we talked about, right? And then another, I think, good example is, we just got IL4 certified, right, within our FedGov space. So we do have that. It's based on the existing Aura platform. So because we're modernizing the existing Aura platform, when we are ready, we will actually, get the IL4 same certification done for Nexus as we have with the current Aura AEC offer that we currently have today, right? So again, we're focused on modernizing the stack, the software stack, but limiting kind of the impact to our customer base.
And this is very significant because the Avaya community includes a lot of people with connection to government, defense, and so on.
Yep.
So pay attention to this space.
Yeah, it's one of those key segments, right, that we've been talking about.
And Darrell, can you help me understand? I know that there are a number of different terms here. Is this IL4 High certification, or is it? Explain to me the difference in terms here.
Yeah, and apologies. Yeah, it is IL4 High that we do have, and it basically opens you up to a lot more of the market, we'll say, within the Fed Gov space, because IL4 High is a much higher standard to achieve. And if for people that do work in the Fed Gov space, they'll understand that they just can't deploy in IL4; they need to deploy in IL4 High, which is a designation that we do have.
So if you're basically an Avaya business partner, you're an MSP, and so you're working with Avaya, you have customers that are doing this, this opens up a lot more opportunity too.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. Well, Darrell, I want to thank you for joining me today. This has been interesting. Thank you for updating us, giving us a deeper look at all this. As we close up, like we were just talking about before we start our podcast, I like to think of the fall as basically, it's the partner season. Everyone's trying to figure out, what should I add to my portfolio? More quietly, I think the enterprises are trying to figure out, hey, how does next year roll out? How do I do these migrations? What's your message for these two communities?
Yeah, no, again, another excellent question. So the way I kind of like to look at it, if you are an Aura customer and you want to stay an Aura customer, that's fine. It's there. It's alive and well. If you have an Aura customer or are an Aura customer that wants to stay here maybe for the short term or medium term, and you want to look at Nexus in the future, then I would invest in an upgrade to 10.3 to get the latest security and vulnerabilities and everything that you need to have to make sure your system keeps running. Take a look at your gateways. G450s will be supported in Nexus, so it kind of starts to future-proof your system. Take a look at your devices and endpoints from that perspective and make sure that you're on the J series or the SIP are the protocols that are going to be supported. And then your SBCs you can reuse as well. All right. If you're seriously looking at Nexus for next year, then we're ready. Our launch is coming up in October, so we are primed to go, and we're looking to get those first deployments that are out there. And what Nexus will allow you to do is actually take your customers. It is not a rip and replace, right? So you get to reuse a lot of what you have that's out there. But at the same time, the migration tools that we do have, we can move departments, we can move user groups, we can move regions, a bit at a time. So what we do is we keep the existing Aura system up and running, and then rebuild everything in Nexus, and then slowly, and because these are critical systems, right? So we don't want to have a migration take everything down when we're supposed to be a mission critical system. So the migration and the tooling needs to support the actual product and the mantra of the product itself.
Darrell, I really want to thank you for joining me today. Thank you for giving us a very good and clear update on not just the product itself, but Avaya's thinking about the migration process. I think the big takeaway for me is, hey, if you're using Avaya Aura, it's supported. You even have some releases coming up. There's also a path to changes you may want to make step by step, and also there's some continuity and security issues that have been looked at and addressed.
No, thanks for the invite, and yeah, I'd love to come back and we can kind of give you an update, because as things change, and we can give your readers and listeners an update on where we are and things where we're going. It's always good to kind of see what changes with the industry, for sure.
Innovate without limits, scale without compromise, and never pay per seat again. Discover why providers choose netsapiens.com.